September 28th, 2023. Summer heat wave moves into the Midwest for this weekend, the first days of Sukkot, but the real heat stays off to our west, bringing beautiful weather to many of the cities here in the Midwest. That's what this episode is about, so enjoy, please, and have a great Yom Tov. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. "100 degrees is what's forecasted for Hill City, Kansas this afternoon. The National Weather Service is forecasting highs in the upper 90s in that area in their zone forecast. But in the local forecast for Hill City, Kansas, high of 100 degrees. What makes this heat extra spectacular is not just the time of the year that it's occurring, but it's the 27 mile per hour wind that's occurring at the same time. Gusts are even higher than that. It's not a wind chill chart, it's a wind heat index chart, which shows that temperatures currently they're 95 degrees. The temperature feels like 97. That's due to the wind, not because of the humidity. The humidity is way down, only in the 50s. But if the temperature should hit 100 degrees, the heat, I guess, I don't know what to call it, heat index, or it will feel like 105 due to the 30 mile per hour winds. It feels like a blast furnace, extreme heat, which is occurring in that area. This is for Hill City, Kansas. All those areas which are under 95 degrees are significantly cooler because, number one, there's little humidity right now. The corn crop has been harvested, and number two, it's very breezy in all of these places. So the breeze is helping to keep the weather down. It's helping to keep the real field temperatures down. But in Hill City, Kansas, and those places where temperatures are 95 or higher, the winds are actually making it feel hotter. So there's a very significant difference between Hill City, Kansas, and the other cities. It's just something phenomenal if the temperature really does hit 100 degrees. It would be even more phenomenal if this would be taking place in October. It's not. We're still in the month of September. 100s have certainly occurred before in the month of September. We have very close to record heat occurring over a widespread area in the Midwest, from Nebraska to Kansas, even Minneapolis, Minnesota, where highs are only going to be in the mid-80s. They also are dealing with very close to record heat. Just to tell you something very interesting about Hill City, Kansas, back in the year 2012, for 5 consecutive days, Hill City, Kansas was actually the hottest temperature in this country. So Omaha, Nebraska, forecasting hot. The National Weather Service, it's always an inspiration when you hear them add an adjective. They describe the actual forecast beyond the temperatures. Not all National Weather Services do that. In St. Louis, they tend to do that if the heat index is 100 or higher. But in Omaha, Nebraska, they say sunny and hot, with high temperatures going into the low 90s for the next several days. So we have what's called an autumn heat wave. But in Hill City, Kansas, it's a little bit of a higher level than an autumn heat wave. You go down into Dallas, Texas, you listen to the 7-day forecast cycle. Highs are in the mid-90s each and every day. It almost feels like there's no end to the heat in sight. Houston, Texas, it's the same routine, with high temperatures in the mid-90s daily. So summer continues very strong in those places in Texas, and even in Hill City, Kansas. Lincoln, Nebraska, forecasters say highs going into the mid-90s tomorrow. The Chicago area, it's going to go unnoticed. The spectacular part of all this is going to go unnoticed. The beautiful weather will be noticed here in the Chicago area. But the fact that we have a summer-like air mass occurring in the middle of the country, Chicagoans might as well, it's like living in a cave, a sheltered cave. They don't know a thing, totally clueless if you're not up to date on what's going on. And even those places out in Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, and Missouri, you have to wonder whether they realize how hot it is in a place like Hill City, Kansas. This is a place which is known that the motorcycle races out in Kansas have always been dangerous due to the strong winds when temperatures are higher than 95 degrees. The question is, what could we expect after that? What could we expect this upcoming weekend, the weekend of the Sukkot holiday, where many people have the custom to sleep outside, and almost everyone has the custom to eat outside. And we know that the bees are always an issue. And at night, when you're dealing with places which are more tropical, the mosquitoes are an issue. And the rain could become an issue. So at one point, I was thinking it was going to be rain-free. I still kind of think that, but we do have chances of thunderstorms which are starting to pop up for Minneapolis, Minnesota for Friday night. You know, we have these pop-up thunderstorms that are possible in some locations. I have not had a chance to look into this to see really how significant it is and which parts of Minneapolis will be affected by this. The same thing goes for Omaha, Nebraska, northeast Nebraska as well. So these are things that may or may not occur. Nothing could be more disturbing than to be woken up by a thunderstorm in the middle of the night. So these are very important things to look into. In terms of the daytime heat, most areas we're talking about highs in the low 80s and overnight lows in the low 60s or maybe even upper 50s. The places which are going into the 90s are having overnight lows in the 60s. It is a little bit hot in those areas. This is, going into October, no hundreds are expected, highs going into the low 90s for places in Kansas and Nebraska. The real question is what's going to be happening when all this pushes away towards the latter part of next week, and that's something which still needs further clarification. There's no shortage of cold air, believe it or not. It's all moving to the west coast. It's coming down. It's coming down straight from Canada, producing mountain snows. And gradually the elevation is lowering. Whether it's an El Nino year or not an El Nino year, it doesn't really matter at this point. The cold air is there and it's sitting there, and forecasters say it's just a matter of time before it actually makes its way into the Midwest. But I can tell you over the past several years, we have had a return to very similar warmth in regards to the consistency in the month of November, which would be equivalent to highs in the 60s and 70s here in Chicago, temperatures in the 80s. Elsewhere, we've had extended spells almost yearly in the month of November. So could very well be we'll see a cool down. All forecasters seem to agree that at some point in October, we will be getting a major cool down. But the trends have been in the month of November, we have had extended warm spells, and in fact, in recent years, we've even had extended warm spells or mild spells, even in the month of December. It's the second half, it's from January onward, that's when we really have to watch out for supercharged storm systems. Anyways, I wish everybody a wonderful day, and stay safe, and realize that for Chicago, we're just in for an absolutely beautiful weekend. As this ridge moves in, we're not in the center of the ridge, so the peak heating does not occur over here, with high temperatures in the low to mid 80s. Lakeside cooling is expected, so temperatures might even be a little bit cooler than that. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a great Yom Tov, and enjoy. You've been listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. This podcast can be found on almost every platform where podcasts are available.